Hi, I'm Isabel, or A Curious Tale, and I'm a tarot, oracle, and runestone reader, and an artist, clothing and doll maker, and I live in Nepal. This is my first YouTube video. I've been asked by some friends to make a channel, and I think it will be really fun. So today I'd like to speak about the Festival of Beltane, because Beltane is coming this Friday, and I thought it would be interesting to look at the festival, but with the idea that this year many of us will be celebrating under lockdown for the first time. So I thought it would be great to look at the festival and share some ideas of how we might want to celebrate if we're quarantined, if we can't leave the house and we can't perhaps buy anything new, we can't perhaps meet up with people. So firstly, Beltane is celebrated on May 1st. It's also referred to as May Day, although some people also start to celebrate it on the evening of April 30th. And who celebrates Beltane? Many people, Wiccans, various pagans, witches, a lot of different traditions celebrate the festival of Beltane, and as far as I'm concerned, it's an open festival, so that means that if you'd like to celebrate, you're more than welcome to join. The idea behind the festival of Beltane is a celebration of fertility, love, union, and the union specifically of the god and goddess. And depending on your background and traditions, that may refer to a specific god and goddess, or that could refer to a more general idea. For some it's literal, and for others it's metaphorical. So it just depends on your tradition. For example, in the Wiccan tradition, the union is between the wildwood god and the young green goddess. Beltane is one of the festivals on the Wheel of the Year, and that is a set of 8 Sabbats and Esbats which represent important points in the changing of the seasons. And the idea is that by celebrating different changes in the seasons and relating it to our own life, then we can sync ourselves with the cycle of nature, which helps us to see our own place in the cycle of the earth, and also helps us to sync up with what's going on around us. For example, in the wintertime we might feel more like hibernating, and when Beltane comes around, the warmer weather might just infuse us with more energy, we feel more lively, and it's a celebration of that. Also, Beltane might be celebrated at different times depending on where you are in the world. So in the northern hemisphere where I am, Beltane would be celebrated on Friday, but in the southern hemisphere where the seasons are opposite, I suppose you would say, they'll be celebrating the festival of Samhain. And when Samhain comes along for us in the northern hemisphere, those in the southern hemisphere would be celebrating Beltane. Obviously some people in the southern hemisphere may also choose to follow the calendar of the northern hemisphere. It's just a personal choice. So some traditional activities for celebrating Beltane, they're pretty much all outside, and they're pretty much all to do with socializing with other people. So one thing would be a hand fasting, which is a sort of pagan marriage, and whereby a couple comes together in union and celebrates their love and makes a commitment to each other. So considering Beltane is a time of love and union, it's the perfect time for hand fasting. Many people also make fires, gather around the fire, they might make music together, they might sing and dance, and Beltane is really a fun festival. It's about having a party, it's about celebrating, and so any form of party would be a great way to celebrate Beltane traditionally. Then another thing people might do in Beltane is waking up very early in the morning on May the 1st and gathering the first dew of the morning, and gathering up that dew and washing their face with it, because it's believed that if you do that, you will ensure long-lasting beauty. So that's a sort of traditional beauty ritual. And perhaps the most iconic way to celebrate Beltane, May Day, is to dance around a Maypole. At least in England, where I'm originally from, in rural areas you can still sometimes find people actually dancing around a Maypole, and it's a tradition that goes back hundreds of years. So the Maypole will be a pole of wood erected, and that quite obviously symbolizes fertility, and it's decorated with many colourful ribbons. And the idea is that people will take a ribbon and they'll dance around the maypole, and as they dance they'll plait the ribbons. They may be singing at the same time or chanting, and that's a great traditional way to celebrate May Day. But yes, these are all celebrations that mean we'd be going outside and meeting up with people. So this year, for most of us, probably all of us, this will not be possible. But I just wanted to share, for anyone who didn't know, some of the traditional ways to celebrate May Day. And I wanted to mention something I found a bit interesting, is that obviously the Maypole image is so iconic, and in Nepal there is a Newa festival called Biscuit Jatra, and in that festival, I mean, there's so many different elements and traditions, but just visually, you also have a really long tree trunk, a singular tree trunk, that is erected by many men who pull it up with ropes. And it's just interesting. It happened around 2 weeks ago, although sadly this year it couldn't be celebrated due to lockdown. But usually it's a big celebration in the city of Bhaktapur, and they erect the wooden pole, and then many men will sort of scramble to get to the top with the hopes of someone being the first to reach the top of the tree trunk which has been erected. And then there's also a tug of war, and yeah, it's an amazing festival. It's very special to my family, and it also happens around the same time of year. So it's not that these are connected, but it's just interesting to see that at the height of spring you have this imagery of a pole symbolizing fertility in both places, both in England, other countries that celebrate with the Maypole, and here in Nepal with the different festival of Biscuit Jatra. I also wanted to just briefly mention the correspondences with Beltane. So that means objects, items that really fit in with the energy of the festival. And many people like to find items that correspond with the festival in order to help them celebrate. So firstly, the colour red is traditionally associated with Beltane because it symbolises fire, an element very prevalent in the festival, and then it also symbolises love, energy. So some people might want to wear red, they might want to decorate their altar or house with red, or simply they might just want to add a little bit of red, maybe red lipstick, a red pendant, something simple. The direction is the southeast, so perhaps if you're doing any kind of ritual or spell, then you might want to face the southeast or consider that direction in your celebrations. In terms of food, which is usually a big part of any pagan or witches festival, we have cakes, which I'm certainly not mad about, and baking cakes, sharing them with friends, is a great tradition for Beltane. Then in terms of flowers, there are so many, but wildflowers is one of them associated with Beltane. And then in terms of goddesses, there are many goddesses from different traditions, but just a few are Venus, Diana, Ariane Rod, Aphrodite, Bloodwed, and so many more. People will often connect with a goddess from the pantheon that they usually work with. Maybe one of them is their matron deity, or it could be a great opportunity to forge a relationship with one of the goddesses traditionally associated with Beltane at this time, if you want to think about starting to make a relationship with one of these goddesses. Then we have crystals associated with Beltane, and people might decorate their altar with these crystals. They might meditate on them or wear them. We have here rose quartz. This is a crystal often associated with love, so it's perfect for celebrating Beltane. Then we have aventurine, bloodstone, and finally this rose in fuchsite, ruby in fuchsite, sorry, and this is pendulum, but you can use any sort of crystal. You might want to use crystal jewellery or crystals themselves. So now I want to share with you just a few tarot cards, oracle cards and a runestone that I feel really exemplify the energy of Beltane. So from the Wildwood Tarot, firstly, we have the Forest Lovers, and this card relates to the Lovers card in the more traditional deck, but you can clearly see here there's a birch tree, a wood often associated with Beltane, adorned with a green ribbon symbolizing health, and then you've got this couple who are having a hand fasting ceremony, which, as I said, hand fasting is a traditional thing to do around the time of Beltane. And this card, obviously the Lovers, does symbolize love and union, which is big elements of the festival. But interestingly, it also symbolizes the idea of choice. And this also relates to Beltane because the festival calls on us to have the strength to choose the path in line with our own desires, to follow what we want to do and to make that choice. Then we have the Three of Vessels, which relates to the Three of Cups, and this is quite simply a party. Interestingly enough, this card came up in my weekly general tarot reading for Beltane, which I did on my Patreon, which I'll link below if you're interested in seeing that. But this card is, as it says, quite simply a joyous celebration. It's calling on us to have fun, to celebrate, to enjoy, to come together, and it also reminds us that we need to stop and celebrate sometimes, and that will actually help us to continue on towards our goals, having that type of respite. Then from the Fairies Oracle by Brian Froud, we have this card, the fairy who was kissed by the pixies. And this beautiful card, you can see fairy just emanating love, surrounded by pixies and other fairies. And this card just calls on us to really open up our hearts to love, to accept love without conditions, union, so many beautiful aspects of the festival. So yeah. And then we have this card, the Singer of Transfiguration. So firstly, it's this beautiful bright red colour, which is very much associated with Beltane, and this card shows an abundance of joy, a fresh start, and again transforming our lives. So relating back to the Forest Lovers, that idea of following what we really want to do. There. And in terms of runes, I'll show you this upside down so it will be the right way around when you see it. This is Bakana, and this rune, if I can show it to you, it represents more literally a birch tree, and this tree is very associated with Beltane, as we saw it also on the Lovers card, and it also has a form which is meant to sort of signify the female form. Now this rune represents feminine power, fertility, creation, a fresh start, so many beautiful things associated with Beltane. And interestingly enough, this rune also came up in our weekly Beltane tarot reading, which also used oracle cards and runestones. And this rune, it's also B for Beltane. It's just a beautiful rune to go along with this festival. So these tarot cards you might want, and oracle cards, runestone, you might want to connect with these specific cards and stones, or just think about the meanings of them in connection to the festival of Beltane, or perhaps look for yourself and see which cards you think really go well with the festival. So I also wanted to talk about, as I said, ideas for how we can celebrate during lockdown. Now, obviously, everyone's situation in different countries or different towns is very different to each other. For example, in Nepal, the lockdown here is very strict. We cannot go outside at all. You can buy food or medicine at the nearest place it's available, but there's no walks, no going into nature. I mean, if you live in the village, it might be a little different, but at least in the cities, you can't go outside, and the amount of things you can buy is also very limited. So that means no communing with nature and no buying special things. But I don't think that limits us in terms of how to celebrate the festival. And I just wanted to share a few ideas of how we might want to celebrate if we're alone, if we're inside, and if we have minimal resources. So the first one was actually in Ray Beth, the author's amazing book, The Hedge Witch's Way. And I wanted to share this one with you because I thought it was such a nice idea. And she suggests making your own mini maypole. So, okay, we can't go out into a field and frolic around the maypole, but we can make a mini one in our own homes on our own. So she suggests finding a piece of birch wood about this big. Now, most of us don't have birch wood lying around, so I think any stick that you might have lying around, any kind of wood, I mean, at a push, a wooden chopstick would be fine. So this is your maypole. And then she suggests finding 3 coloured ribbons. Again, if you don't have ribbons, thread, wool would also work, of course. And you should find the colour for each ribbon that symbolises something that you want to bring into your life or manifest. Also, it's the waxing moon, and so that's a great time for any kind of spell or ritual that's going to bring things into our life or increase things. And of course, you can use more traditional colour correspondences, or you can find your own. But simple ideas would be love. If you want to manifest love, that could be red or pink. Health could be green, and positivity and joy could be yellow. Intuition could be indigo, different things like that. So you select the colours of ribbons depending on what you want to manifest, and then if you cast a circle or have a certain way of creating a sacred space, you would do that. And then you would get your maypole, your ribbons, and consecrate them. Then tie the ribbons around the top of the maypole, and as you imagine what you want to manifest, or perhaps you've even made up your own chant or song to go with it, you would plait the ribbons around the maypole and think of what you want to manifest as you do that. And then you have your maypole. You could decorate your altar with it, you could put it somewhere on display in your house, or you could just keep it somewhere safe. And then you would close your sacred space as you wish to do so, and then that could be a great May Day Beltane celebration. And obviously it's a time when people may want to do beauty, love, fertility spells, any that you already have, or you can find those. There are so many amazing videos of ideas for spells, and it's also a great time to do that. Of course, many people want to decorate their altar for Beltane, and you can definitely do that with things you already have lying around. Perhaps even if you don't have an altar cloth in the colour that you might want to decorate it with, you could find a very long skirt, for example, in that colour, and drape that over. No one will know. So there's a lot of things we can do even if we don't have too many resources. Another way that it could be really nice to celebrate Beltane if we're on our own is to make a doll. And you could even make a doll of the god and the goddess, because the festival does celebrate their union. Personally, I'm very attracted to goddess imagery, and last year I made a different doll for each festival on the Wheel of the Year. So this is the doll I made for the festival of Beltane. To me, she really symbolises the festival. She is covered in red and pink. Red, a classic correspondence, then there's lots of hearts and different imagery which is traditionally associated with Beltane. Also the idea of union and frolicking. She's wearing a bit of a risque ensemble, so we also have that. She also has a job as a hairdresser at the circus, as you can see, with her scissors, so she is busy, you know, she gets around, but she is my doll that I made to symbolise Beltane. Now, obviously for this I used fabric stuffing, fabric paint, I sewed, used lace and whatnot, but you don't need to make something that's this, time consuming. You could make a paper doll, which you just draw a doll of a goddess, or maybe something that symbolises Beltane for you, and cut it out. You could put this on your altar, you could decorate your house with it, or you could even cut things out of magazines that to you symbolise Beltane, and again make a paper doll or make a piece of artwork that you use to decorate your altar, decorate your home, or put in your grimoire if you don't want to display it, or you could do that after the festival. So I think that could be a really fun way to celebrate on your own. And also, as the author Clarissa Pinkola Estes says in her amazing book Women Who Run with the Wolves, if we take part in craft traditions, especially those that have a long history, firstly, the act of creating something physical can be so confidence boosting for us and make us feel really fulfilled, but also that idea that we're connecting to a really long line of people who came before us can be very fulfilling and very healing. So I think that any form of craft would be an absolutely amazing way to celebrate the festival. Then, if you like cooking and you have baking supplies around, then you could bake a cake, because cakes are associated with Beltane. You could bake a feast, cook a feast, and I'm sure that anyone you're quarantined with would be perfectly happy to take part in a Beltane feast with you. And also, if you're lucky enough to have a garden or even a few flower pots lying around, gardening would be a great way to connect with nature. There may even be some fairies who come to your garden, because at Beltane, as with many important festivals, the veil between this world and the next, between our realm and the fairy realm, is seen to be much thinner. So, with caution, it could be a great time to connect with any fairies around, fairy energy, or to start forging a relationship with the fairies, or to build on one you already have. And if you've baked a cake, you might want to offer a little bit to them. So that could also be a fun way to celebrate the festival. So I'd like to just share with you, I'll just move these crystals, I'd like to share with you some books that I think have great passages on Beltane and are also just really interesting books. Of course, reading is another great way to celebrate the festival on your own, and the more diverse the array of books you read, the more interesting and diverse sort of way that you'll be able to celebrate the festival. So firstly, as I mentioned, Ray Beth's book, The Hedge Witch's Way. This is a great book because she details practices for solitary practitioners, and we may find ourselves being a solitary practitioner right now, and she has some great, as well as the suggestion that I gave from her book, she has some other ones for Beltane as well. Then we have an absolute classic, The Spiral Dance by Starhawk. This book has a short passage on Beltane and with some beautiful words about the festival, as well as a lot of practical applications and different practices you can do, not just for Beltane but for many different things. Then we have Keith Morgan's Recut, Awakens. This was published at the end of the 80s. I got this book second-hand at a shop in Glastonbury, and it's a really interesting insight into Wicca in the 80s, and as well as the Wheel of the Year, it just has a lot of very clear and concise explanations of different parts of Wicca. And I will be honest, it was this beautiful cover that originally drew me to the book. Then we have Amethyst Rain Hatayama's book, The Spiritual Feminist. This book is great because she details how she personally celebrates each festival on the Wheel of the Year, as well as different milestones in people's lives. She gives a recipe for each festival on the Wheel of the Year, and she gives a lot of her own life experience as a tarot reader and a witch. Then finally we have the Ancient British Goddess by Kathy Jones. I got this book at the Goddess Temple in Glastonbury, which is one of my favourite places in the whole world. It's a very beautiful space where there's a lot of events that you can attend and a lot of different programs. And this book details goddesses of the British Isles, and it also has a very comprehensive section on the Wheel of the Year and shares some different goddess stories that pertain to each festival. It also has a great section at the back with profiles of various women who are all very inspiring. So those are the books I wanted to share, and I think that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted to say about Beltane. I hope that everyone will have an amazing festival this Thursday evening or Friday, and I hope that despite the difficult situation, people will be able to find a way to celebrate at least a little bit in a way that is safe and takes into account the current situation. Of course, if people are feeling down and they don't feel like they can celebrate, that's absolutely fine, because it will come around next year, so there's no reason to stress or worry yourself. But if you have any ideas of your own how you would celebrate Beltane during lockdown, and simple ways that you can celebrate the festival but without leaving your house, without buying anything new, I would really love to hear them. And if you have any other experiences, please do share them. So this is my first ever YouTube video. Yeah, it was an interesting experience. Let me know what you think, and please let me know if there's anything that you'd like me to speak about. I'll consider that. And finally, I'd just like to quickly mention what I'm wearing, because when I watch YouTube videos, I like to hear about that. So this dress, this reversible waistcoat, and my reversible headscarf, they're all from my family and my brand Clove and Moon. I'll link that as well. It's on Instagram. And this fabric, it's called Hakupatasi. It's a traditional Newa handloom fabric, and it comes in all prints, and each print has a different meaning. So this one, Charlie Buddha, it represents wheat husks, which I think is lovely. And also I have this doll's head necklace, which I made this weekend from making a doll's head, and these traditional Newa beads, as well as some beads from vintage necklaces. And I also have these vintage traditional Newa bangles, and these, which are worn by various groups of people, including Newas, but are also made a lot in Rajasthan. So yeah, that's what I'm wearing today, in case you are interested. So thank you so much for watching my video, and I'll hopefully see you again. Bye!